Okay, let's turn back into the kid.
He's not the neighbor, it's Bryce.
Okay,
It is
okay.
Bryce. You're not Z.
What do you mean I'm not Z?
Get away from me.
What do you mean I'm not Z?
You're not Z.
I don't want your pickles. I don't want your chairs. Come here, buddy.
No,
Come here,
it's
John.
Bryce.
Oh, guts. Z. Z, no. Z, no.
What you just saw is the neighbor player looking exactly like someone else in the match. The victim was initially confused but stood no chance because he was alone. Look at what happens after.
Okay.
Oh, it is Bryce.
Other players are freaking out, but since the neighbor now has the skin of a different player using the mask item, they immediately accept him into the group. With a mask, you look exactly like another player, down to the nickname. Our idea here was to create situations similar to that scene from John Carpenter's The Thing. You know exactly which one I'm talking about. And boy are these situations fun. I'm Alex Nichiporchik, CEO of TinyBuild, here to give you a producer's update on Secret Neighbor. Do let us know in the comments what kind of topics you'd like to hear more about. Today I'll give you the rundown of what's been happening with Secret Neighbor, the Hello Neighbor multiplayer game, over the past couple of months. Now we've done 2 semi-public tests so far. The first one happened in August with a very basic version to test out the core loop. The second concluded this week, and we've learned a lot of things that work in the game and things that need our attention and need to be fixed. Before we get into the details, I know you're all wondering when you'll get to play. Before we give the alpha into the hands of fans, we need to figure out a few things like matchmaking and how do we rate players, and maybe we allow players to rate each other. The last thing you want to do in a game like this is constantly get matchmade with, people who scream and re a lot. It's a lot of fun to play with friends right now, and we need to solidify that experience first before moving on to playing with people you don't know, or playing with randoms. So please go ahead and sign up for the alpha at secretneighbor.com, and as soon as we're ready we will give you a chance to participate. So let's talk about the progress on the game. This summer we had a barebone version of the core loop, and it worked like a charm. The core system is very simple. Up to 6 players, one of them is a neighbor in disguise. The neighbor wins by eliminating other players and needs to do so by gaining their trust via voice and behavior, so voice chat and social interactions. That's the core of the game. From there we expanded this core loop and added a few things to the formula. For example, now we give all players starting items. Players can now actually eliminate the neighbor or other players. The neighbor will respawn though, so it's a temporary setback. But if for some reason during a social interrogation scene you kill off another human player, well, he's dead for good. The neighbor can also disguise himself as any other player, as you've seen in the beginning of the video. This creates a lot of social interactions that require you to gain trust and overpower other people's opinions, which feels really great. The neighbor now also has a sonar that allows him to see through walls, kind of like a wall hack, and he can actually lock gates on the fly. So he can see where players are and lock them in or try and separate them. It's a lot of fun. Kid players can also put a pot on their head, which does 2 things. It adds health to the player, and also it makes that player invisible to the sonar, so it's kind of like a counter to the sonar. And now players can also find a Nerf gun, which is very powerful for stunning the neighbor. It spawns randomly in the house. Another change is that nicknames are now visible on top of player models, and this is going to get nerfed a little bit because we want you to be able to see the player nickname only when in proximity. So that if you see someone running past, you will not be able to see their nickname. And we also made the map darker with the idea that if you can choose a flashlight to spawn with, well, just use a flashlight. And we were wrong. We're going to revert the map back to its original lighter state and figure out how to do plays with light at a different stage in development. Now, all of these mechanics together create a fun role-playing experience. We had a few situations where two identical players would be standing and shouting at each other, and a group of people would hold them at quote-unquote gunpoint, well, technically box point. They would basically be monitoring them while others scavenge for items around the house. So, if you eliminate the neighbor player, it is fine and everyone trusts each other. But there were situations where for some reason we ended up eliminating not the neighbor player. And in that situation, the neighbor player typically runs off with a maniac laugh.
Yes, look at this! Remember this, Delirious? Oh my God! Remember this? Help! Help!
It's a great experience that I haven't really experienced in video game form before. You would have these kind of interactions when you play board games like Werewolf or Mafia, but this is the first time I'm experiencing it in a video game form. Now let's talk about what we're working on. These were the things that are already in, and I explained some things that we're changing, some things that we're tweaking, but there are a few things that are coming up in terms of design that I wanted to share. The first and probably the biggest one is progression. We are working on progression during the match. We want to create a situation where in the beginning of the match, the neighbor isn't really strong enough to go full-blown hunting, so that he needs to blend in and have hidden agendas to level up, unlocking extra abilities and becoming stronger as the match progresses. At the same time, we want to incentivize human players to scavenge for items that give them a better chance to survive a confrontation with the neighbor. This design is similar to what Evolve did with their progression system, and we're trying out a few ways to achieve the same feeling. We already have a half-dozen mechanics designed for the neighbor that could fit in here. For example, the neighbor can be collecting specific items or resources in the house and level up from level 1 until level 3. And at level 2 he'd get faster movement speed and an additional random item that is also assigned to tier 2. So this way every match would feel different depending on which items you get. And at the same time, kids would also get their own upgrades on their side, making them stronger. And this creates this tug-of-war situation where both teams are asynchronously playing and upgrading with each other until the final synchronous confrontation happens. We're also working on voice chat upgrades. Right now we're using a peer-to-peer system for proximity voice chat, and it's not as reliable as we'd like. Sometimes voice quality gets scrambled, so we're looking into a proper solution, and this is one of the bigger backend tasks that will impact the game in a positive way. It's just that it's going to be difficult to see progress on it until it fully works. And the last part that we're working on in the coming weeks is custom games. Something that many will appreciate is the ability to configure custom games. Things like removing the timer, the nicknames, tweaking variables in a match, tweaking speed or item drop rates. We're experimenting with what we can put into custom games, but since the game is already built for playing with friends, this is a logical option to add. We anticipate that a lot of groups will figure out what is their favorite game mode and they're going to stick with it, and we will learn a lot from it. So we're hoping to have most of these things in by Halloween, which is when we anticipate to do a wider playtest. So stay tuned for news on that, and thanks a lot for listening.